Human beings are terrible. We're just terrible. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is directed by Rupert Wyatt, written by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, and stars James Franco, Freida Pinto, John Lithgow, and of course Andy Serkis as Caesar. Now, in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Will Rodman, who is played by James Franco, is trying to develop a cure for Alzheimer's, and to do this, they have to test their drug on apes. And let's just say some bad things happen, and their program gets shut down, and Will finds himself taking home this baby ape, which he later on names Caesar. And as Caesar grows older, they discover that he's very, very intelligent and almost human-like. However, then Caesar begins to experience the evils of man and later on starts a revolution of sorts. Now, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is 20th Century Fox's first installment in the reboot series of the original Planet of the Apes movies, and not the one directed by Tim Burton, which I have not seen, but lots of people want to kind of forget about. But even then, back then in 2011, when this movie came out, this was a remake that people weren't really excited for because Planet of the Apes wasn't really like the most popular old sci-fi thing, and the new audiences of today weren't really interested in it. So it seemed like a bad idea on paper. However, it turns out that Rise of the Planet of the Apes is surprisingly very well made with some great special effects, and it's also very smart, and it really does pack an emotional punch. Now, first of all, you gotta touch on the visual effects in this movie. We're talking about the apes, of course, and fun fact, they didn't use any real apes in this movie. Every single ape you see in this movie is CGI or someone in a motion capture suit, and it's amazing what they pulled off because the amount of detail just in these apes' faces is mind blowing. Like they really do look photorealistic at certain points, especially at like the beginning of the movie. I wasn't sure if I was watching like a nature documentary or something. And what's so impressive about the apes is that they look better close up instead of like far away. Like I just reviewed the Transformers movies, and that's an example of a movie with special effects that look better like from afar. And with the Transformers, they look very alien to us. Like we don't have stuff like that in the real world, so we kind of just our brains just kind of like buy the fact that they're so complex and weird looking. But here, the fact that they were able to recreate something so familiar to us and just make it look real is a huge feat. And it's not just what the apes look like and just how they move. It really is just how like the light bounces off of them and how seamlessly they fit into this world. And we gotta talk about Caesar, because whenever Caesar's on screen, you believe he's there as like an ape the entire time. Like at the back of your head, you know it's Andy Serkis in a motion capture suit. However, credit also to Andy Serkis and the director and all the other actors. But it just really does feel like there is this whole new entity on screen, and you really can see that they put so much detail into just making this ape so lifelike, and they really, really do pull it off. And of course, to couple the great visual effects are is great sound design, and it's great how the apes here really, really sound scary, and that's what I really imagine them to sound like. But it's also great that they were able to make all the different apes sound different from each other. They didn't just copy paste the sounds and stuff. Like they really took time to like develop each ape's voice. And when all these apes are screaming in like revolution or whatever, it's freaky because when you put yourself into the human's shoes, like that in that kind of situation, you just run. And what I like so much about Rise of the Planet of the Apes is that it's not your typical origin story. And like when you say origin story, you think of like superheroes and stuff, and they're familiar beats. You introduce a character, something happens to change that character, and he fights the bad guy, and happy ending. But here, it's really a kind of origin story that builds towards a tragedy, at least for humankind. And that's the thing, you know exactly where this movie is headed, however, it still works so well. There's no freak accident or anything, nothing really random just causes this revolution. Like this, the build up to the actual Rise of the Planet of the Apes is actually very well thought out and makes a lot of sense. And like I mentioned a while ago, I like how this movie is so, it marries the intelligent and the emotional so well because, the science in this movie, while it's obviously like not real, it's very much based on actual, research and stuff as far as I know. However, at the same time, this movie also works as like a commentary on, taking control of nature and how that's dangerous in society's fear of the unknown, which is, abusing these animals and, how that might, bite you in the butt. Acting wise, also, this movie is actually very good. James Franco, while I don't think this is like his best role ever, he still does some of his James Francoisms. He does a really, really good job selling the chemistry. Like whenever he's interacting with Caesar, you really do feel like he's talking to an ape. And whatever James Francoisms he might have, he really makes up for it with just like pure emotion. Like he has some really, really great scenes here where he just really sells it. And overall, the supporting cast does a really good job. They're also very committed to, just, being in this world. It doesn't feel like they're acting with a bunch of CGI things. It really does feel like they're acting with other actors. Freida Pinto is good, John Lithgow is good. It's good to see Brian Cox back, and of course Tom Felton for all you, Harry Potter fans who miss him. But of course, Andy Serkis steals the entire movie. Like the level of commitment he has to, every role he plays is just fantastic. Like this guy deserves so much more credit than he gets. And some might argue that he's really just kind of performing as the motions and stuff, but the actual emotion in Caesar's face isn't real. That's not true. Like he really does put on a real performance in this movie. And what's so great about his performance is that he captures something in between being an emotional human being who's like prone to anger and prone to very curious and stuff, and he captures that middle ground in between that human and an ape. Andy Serkis pretty much never talks in this movie, and still, like, he is so powerful as a presence. And you really gotta give credit to Rupert Wyatt, the director, because the way he directs this movie, and especially like all the scenes with the apes and stuff, he treats the apes with so much respect. They're not treated as like a gimmick or like just another CGI thing. Like there's real emotion behind these apes, and his dedication to making the audience respect these apes really pays off in the end when Caesar has a big moment. I won't spoil what that is, but you know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. And when that big moment comes, like, you don't even see them as apes anymore. These are like characters. And Rupert Wyatt definitely has a lot of fun with the action scenes. A few action scenes in the movie, I think they're directed very well because he has lots of fun with the environment and how apes can just kind of like climb over everything. And for the most part, I think he does juggle the themes fairly well, the emotional stuff and the intelligent stuff. But I only say fairly well because this is where I segue into the things that I didn't really like about the movie. For one, the human story kind of dies out by the end, and I think that's kind of like unfair for the humans because we spent so much time with James Franco's character and the rest of the cast, and it doesn't feel like there's closure for them. Like, it's strange that the movie spends so much time building up with both the human side and the ape side, and by the time they reach the end, it's just all about the apes. And then I just kind of wanted closure for Will. However, my bigger issue with this movie is the fact that the evil humans, the ones running the corporation or whatever, the scientific stuff, they're pretty much one-sided, evil. At least, like, some of the humans here are just, unspeakably cruel for absolutely no reason, and like not believable reasons at least. And I know that you're kind of supposed to root for Caesar by the end, but yeah, I should have been more conflicted about rooting against my own species. I understand that there are humans like this, but when it's a movie and stuff, like, I kind of want more motivation. That's probably just me. But in the end, I do think Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a very, very good movie. I know some people who don't really enjoy it as much, and I understand that. However, if you haven't seen this movie yet, I advise you don't go into it expecting the, typical origin story. Enjoy it for what it presents. It's a very, very different kind of movie, and it's good in that regard. And I think it's great that this movie went well. It was a critical and commercial success, and I think that's great because there's so much you can do with this franchise. Like, if you just treat it right, it can go lots of places. Alright, so that's my review of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.